States of America and for the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order, the treasurer's report. I'll switch to the treasurer's report first.
So you look at actual versus budget for the 6 months ended December, or about halfway through the year, not counting the set-asides for capital improvements. We're about $45,000 under budget for that 6-month period. Most of that is just related to various smaller accounts. There's not any one giant variance. You will see about $6,000 under budget in health insurance. That's partially because the health insurance changed, and there'll be a little bit of a catch-up in January, but nothing substantial. In terms of the capital improvement set-aside, I looked back to the last 5 years, I think, of financial statements, and I still don't like the number. I need to dig into it a little more, because in my head, there were set-asides back when I was on the board, which was before that maybe. So maybe I'm just not going back far enough to capture the correct number. So I'm going to continue to look at that to try and get an accurate count of exactly how much there should be or was in the capital improvement set aside. Other than that,
Doesn't it have its own separate account?
kind of, but that wasn't always used.
Okay.
That's a more recent thing, and that's actually the reason I was looking at this was there's no reason to have a separate account for it, and it just kind of adds to the confusion of the financials to have a separate account. So as long as it's being yes, so as long as it's being tracked, it doesn't need to be in its own bank account. But until I feel really comfortable with what the number was, I don't know that I want to really recommend combining the accounts.
And once we know that exact number, we will then know how much we have to bring to bear on various projects.
Correct.
Which is a good thing, yeah.
But other than that, does anybody have any questions or comments?
I mean, the other thing we could do is just pick a number to consider that.
I mean, it's arbitrary. It's always arbitrary, right? Because you can always move money into or out of it. I was just trying to come up to what it actually had built to over the years.
As long as whatever number we use is more than that.
Correct.
Okay. So do we normally adopt check register first, or the treasurer report first, or?
Yeah, I make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Second by Karen. All those in favor? Opposed? Adopted. Check registry. We'll get a chance to look at that. Any questions, concerns? All right. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to accept the check register as presented.
All those, seconded by Peter. All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Adopted unanimously. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Karen, as always. Pleasure. All right. Public input session. So we had someone walk in. Hi, would you like to comment for public input?
Well, my name is Carlos Millan. I've lived in the town of Fielderland all my life. I just wanted to come to this meeting. I saw it advertised on your website, so I just wanted to come and see what the issues are you're discussing. So,
Welcome.
Thank you.
Very excited to have you here.
Yes, thanks for
First
coming.
in a long time. so-
Carlos, what's your last name?
it's Millan.
Oh, that's right. Yep. I think I spoke to your wife or your mother. I can't remember what.
I probably was my mother.
Yeah, your mother was in the library, and yep, and she said you were interested. I said, well, tell her to come.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, please
Thank
do.
you very much. It's good to be
And
here.
actually, do you mind just filling this out? So we have like your address and stuff on file.
You also probably will want to take that coat off.
Oh, yes.
So,
All right. Well, this is the first public input session we've had in a while. Okay, great. So let's go to committee reports. Building and grounds.
okay.
Is that Jason's?
Well, that's Jason's committee. We did not meet as a committee, except that in December we had that joint meeting of buildings and grounds and design steering. I can update us on the repair lane and the heat pumps, but let's start with the design steering committee, and maybe should that be you, Chris, to talk about that, or?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we just had a meeting at 4:30 today, and obviously Paul Mays and his colleague Rebecca were here. They presented the most recent version of the plans for renovation, taking into account staff comments received since the December joint meeting. Please don't feel bad when I say this next thing, but he said, I didn't get any input from the board after the December meeting. So just reminding you that you received via email a floor plan. I can presumably get him to send me a new floor plan tomorrow that I can send out to you. But it's kind of,
I would just say that the new floor plan, the administrative area is not gonna be what it is.
yeah.
Everything else is probably accurate.
And I will try to get you a new one, but it's
No
Fairly
rush,
accurate.
no rush.
if you wanna have an input on it, this is the time though to start doing it.
Is there a time frame you can give everyone, or is that just too arbitrary to make the
The next meeting is, January 23rd,
Right?
and, they're gonna have the new drawings all done by that time, so if you want input on what they just did, it probably should be next week.
And following the instructions I've received from Barbara, I will try to remember to get out an email to you all, just telling you when and where the design steering committee meeting is, because obviously you're welcome if your schedule permits, so.
And it is, January 23rd at 4:30. The one thing I would just add, one of the changes was to the children's area. And if you remember the drawing before, the children's area had, the main children's area with a programming area at the top, or what do you wanna call it, at the far end, and a drop-in area at this end. And that was changed to having the main children's area all at this end, going up, the drop-in program area at the far end. It's kind of side by side, coming down instead of across. So, I really like that there's a bathroom that's gonna be in the programming area and a bathroom outside the program area between the drop-in and the program area.
I was just interested in what the staff thought about it, because it's their area, you know, the children's area, they're all supportive.
I could, well, yes, with some
Yeah.
some caveats. For example, the IT department was slated to switch places basically with sort of the staff lounge. And they had some concerns about that, so in the newer plan, they're in a slightly different spot with some outside windows, which they wanted. And then the PPS staff had a concern that one of the new restrooms was in essence for them and opened right into their workspace, and they just felt it would be uncomfortable to, people would walk into the restroom and you'd hear the toilet flush and, stuff like that.
But as for the IT, we're talking about putting it back just where it is. So,
Great.
But
Keep it
mostly
just-
from a
keep it-
program perspective, everybody,
Yeah.
children's folks
Yeah.
like the coaches and, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question, and maybe this was answered when we did the presentation, but I saw that we put in Peter's, in this room, the cafe.
Peter's Cafe. is
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Have we put thought into who is actually going to be running the cafe? Is that something that's,
Not so much, but I'll tell you where I'm at on that. The model that seems to me to make the most sense, not my decision, but is to lease the space to a for-profit business. And I did get an inquiry last week from a local coffee shop bakery in Gilderland that is interested. It's the same group that has been interested throughout. I think we would have to issue some sort of RFP to give people a chance to compete on that rather than just awarding it to one company. But they checked in about a week ago and said, any chance we can be, so we have one party that's interested. The other model that is out there is the idea of having it, well, the two other models out there, the idea of having it run by a culinary arts program or a BOCES or even theoretically the Gilderland Central School District. I think it would take them a little bit of time to develop a proposal. And then the last is for some sort of a human service agency to run it, such as the Puzzles Cafe down in Schenectady, which is staffed by people on the spectrum. But I think the least likely model is that we get in the business of food service. So,
That's not actually.
so.
You mean Peter's not gonna retire?
Yeah, I thought the whole time, I thought Peter was taking it.
Put a bid in.
You have a little bit of experience with that, right?
So one issue that we raised in the design steering committee meeting that just to remind all board members that we theoretically or actually need to deal with this issue is that, you know, we've been sort of invited in a way to partner with the school district on their upcoming capital project. So the way that works, according to an email I got a couple of months ago from Cliff Nooney, is that they expect, and please correct me if anything has changed, but they expect to go to a public vote in November of 18 with construction happening in 2022. And when we talked about that a couple hours ago in our meeting, some of us, of course, wanted to do whatever renovations, constructions we needed to do sooner than that, which would be great, except that Paul expressed some concern about the ability of the state ed department to process the application. Apparently they're several months behind. They've got this new program where you can pay extra to be considered in real time rather than waiting.
You basically are paying somebody else to do some of the work.
Yeah, they're paying them to hire somebody.
$8,000, so it would be something I think we would consider to move forward with this project because it would save us a year and a half to actually be able to start doing the work.
Yeah. And one thing I personally like, and this is new, I didn't bring it up in the design steering committee meeting, but I like the fact that the school district apparently has a regular practice when they have a construction project, recruits members of the community to serve on the committee. And I think we might want to consider doing that as we go forward. I don't know if it's hard for the school district to get people to volunteer.
What do you mean by committee?
Well, the capital project that the school district is contemplating has a committee that guides it, steers it. And they put out, I've seen now 2 emails through the SNN or whatever, where they say, do you have construction or building management experience? Would you like to serve on this committee? And it might help us build public support to even just issue that call. Even if nobody came, it allows you to say you were more inclusive in your planning process. So
That's a good idea.
I don't know.
So what would this committee do? So this committee would be in charge of the project for us, I guess, what I mean.
Well, we have a committee that's helping to shape it now, so I guess the decision would be, does that committee continue to serve once the project is launched? I would think we could benefit from having that kind of oversight if we're doing a project.
It's just input before,
Right,
the
right,
committee would be
yeah.
working
It's now.
with the
It's now,
design.
yeah.
Right about now.
Oh, so it is, we have to actually.
Yeah, it's almost late, yeah. So, yep. So,
We probably have a few more meetings before it's finalized.
would it be too late to put out a call?
What's up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What's the feeling of the board?
It's good, it's just good. for government, that's all.
I figured that. I knew that was gonna happen.
We will do it
Yeah.
next week if that's your
Yeah,
your will.
that'd be good.
And we'd be looking for probably 2, maybe 3 people at
Watch
once.
the torch from
Two.
So how so what happens if we get 10 people? Who is picking the 3? The current committee?
I don't know.
Good question.
I'll let
Congratulations,
the,
Tom.
viewers and grounds do.
Alright, so the Building Grounds Committee is now charged with, depending on how many applicants, picking the applicants they feel is best. I won't even put a number on it, because I don't wanna tie our hands, but
Right.
Building Grounds Committee can pick as many they feel is necessary, and depending on the applicants, so.
And then the other issue that I started with is, at some point, I think both the district and the library have to decide whether it's, whether they have a higher likelihood of success working together or working separately. And even though we were sort of invited to work with the district, I don't know that that invitation is engraved in stone. I don't know, but I think it would be accurate to say that working with us is on the table, but is not decided from the district's point of view. Is that correct?
They're willing, but
Yeah, it depends on the
We want
timetable.
to wait till 2022.
Well, we would, I think the waiting part is more for when the vote is, and the fees for getting that together, so I think after that, when it starts could be different for us than for them.
If you wanna use the same construction manager and the same architect and stuff, then you sort of have to do it together,
Yeah,
while there's, is on site.
Well, as this is kind of coming up, I don't. Do we need to decide this tonight? But I would say we probably need to decide it soon, if not tonight, by next meeting.
I would think maybe in the March meeting, we might have to decide that, but I don't know, you know.
I would. I'll put a date on it ourselves, if that's fine. Is at March meeting we have to have a vote on if we're doing it with the school district, and I think that's fair for us and fair for the school district to let them know ahead of time. But that I guess dictates to when we're going to have a vote.
Well, yeah, I mean, we also have to have finished plans at that point, which I think we would, if we stop, and I'm not complaining, but if we stop asking him to change the plans, we could certainly have finished plans at that point in time. I would anticipate having finished plans by our March board meeting.
Okay.
So we'll determine if we're working with the school district.
And I guess if we decide we're not, then we have more time to kind of continue to get to plans we want. But so I guess everyone keep that in the back of their mind.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Of course.
the other question is whether working with them or not, presumably there's some sort of public vote required, and it sounds like their public vote is November of 18. If we're not gonna work with them, then I guess our public vote would either be in May of this year or May of next year.
or November 18th.
Oh, yeah, we could hold our own, yeah.
We can do it at the same time, but
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be,
And,
you do the vote.
and theoretically, we could also just hold our own election
Yeah.
Yeah.
anytime we wanted to,
Yeah.
too. But,
Well, that failed pretty badly last time. So
I like the idea of working with the school district.
yeah.
yeah, so, okay, so that's what I had on.
So what are and because we all have to think about this for next meeting, what are the benefits to working with the school district, like cost-wise?
You get a cost savings and efficiency by having the same construction management firm, like, their projects, I don't know what they're doing, but their projects tend to be much larger in scale than ours. And so, as Cliff put it the other time that we worked together, like, sure, we'll do that library for you too, kind of thing, and so it worked well with the roof project and loading dock project. There's the efficiency, it's the efficiency of construction management and architecture, I think. It's kind of the professional services that you're paying for.
Well, and also even your contractors,
Mm-hmm.
if all their equipment is over at
Right.
Woodland Elementary,
Yeah.
they just have to come over here to do a parking lot or do a roof or whatever. They don't have to move equipment for miles, and
Right.
so we saw the cost savings.
If they're gonna have all their stuff here, do this, and then move their stuff right over to the school and do theirs, that's
Is
easy.
the school district tax exempt?
I presume that they are.
Okay, because there was some question about whether we were, so.
Yep.
We are, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we are, so,
I guess the second part of that would be this November 18th vote is essentially a bond vote, correct?
Yes.
So would it be two separate bond votes, one for the library and one for, okay, so it's two separate, so we would have to have a bond number
right.
probably by November 18th if we're working with the school, well, definitely by November 18th.
Yeah.
If
Or
we're,
long before that.
yeah.
This summer.
That would be held at the same time as the general election,
All I was told was November 18 was their time.
so you might,
not the
if it
general
is held at the same time as the general election, you might bring out people who aren't particularly interested in the school library, who you might not wanna bring out.
That's
Right.
not the
Yeah,
general
that's
election.
right.
General election's the first Tuesday of
Yeah.
November. It's
Well,
the
when
18th.
I
No,
think
it's not the 18th, it's
November.
November of 2018.
Oh, okay.
So,
Maybe it is. I don't know.
They do
So
general
we should should probably just
My guess is they are.
check on, I mean, you're right, why would
Cost
you
it.
They did, yeah.
2 votes?
Right.
Yeah. But I think that also brings a whole another problem. Like Herb says, I think you're gonna bring out probably a lot more people, and I don't think necessarily turnout is beneficial for us. I think we have a group of the population that votes, yes, and a big turnout I don't think is a good thing for
But
us.
does this go to a committee for a recommendation to the board? I mean, does it, all this proposal should, or I mean, the potential should be reviewed by a committee, right? Just to do pros and cons and then bring it forward, I would think.
So what?
The cons is both doing it at the same time, the taxpayer's gonna look, well, this one wants to do this one, this one wants to do this, so.
But they're also looking at the school district and saying, oh, they want, let's say 20 million, and the library wants 6. So seems like very reasonable compared to
Right.
200, so.
But you
And-
assign a numeric number against the efficiencies too, that you
Right,
publicize
right.
before that, but I mean, my assumption would be a committee would just review that a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the actual the numbers. I guess I just wanted to kind of get the big ticket items because we're voting on this next month, and I don't. And typically I love the committees, but to vote on this, I think we all have to discuss it and all have to kind of.
Right, but a committee usually takes it for a recommendation, right, to bring it. You know, to do it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So Cindy, or we need a lot more information out, I would think, before
I
we
mean,
do it all for next month.
I think we certainly do. Because this is going to be the biggest vote that many of us take. So, I mean, it's certainly the biggest vote I've taken since the vote for the board. So yeah, all right. So let's kick it to a committee, but they're just coming up with questions. I mean, we have to be full. Everyone on this board, because last time, and I'll tell you this because other trustees who are no longer here complained that they thought the process was like not transparent or something. And it was because we kicked it to a committee, and the committee did all this work, and then just presented it to the board, and they didn't want to get involved in the committee. So that's why I'm hesitant to kind of start this off with a committee. But I think there are so many unanswered questions that maybe. So what committee should we kick it to? Building and grounds. Okay, yeah. So buildings and grounds. I'll talk to Jason. I mean, he needs to be like super aware on this. And his 100. I need him at 100% on this. So, but I'll talk to Jason about that.
It'd be good if he started coming to the all A's meetings.
Yeah. Okay. So they're gonna meet.
I think it'd be good if the whole
Yeah.
grounds committee started coming.
I think it would be good for the entire board to
Yeah.
start going. I think it's this is it. This is the big project. So and we gotta have buy-in from everybody.
And next meeting's 123 at 4:30.
And honestly, I might be in the minority. I'm still not sure how I feel about all this. So, because I was here for the last bond going down, so I'm not, set one way or another. So, but that's just me. So, all right, building and grounds.
That was buildings and grounds, in terms of the, renovation. Mercy Care Lane update should not take that long. We got the letter, that Brian and I drafted, signed by everybody except Jason. Brian's gonna take the letter, get Jason to sign it and send it out. I'll let Peter Barber know that we've sent it. And Peter, last I spoke to him, which was before Christmas, had not heard, actually before New Year's, had not heard anything back from First Columbia. We do have frequent complaints. It's not constant complaints, but frequent complaints at the two adult service desks about the situation. But we have trouble some nights at 5 o'clock getting out of here. And just as a side point, for all of you to be aware, little thing first is that some of the public complaints have assumed that road is closed because it's winter. And we've informed them that we don't expect that to be a seasonal closure. The larger point to consider is that in the spring, St. Peter's, or the corporate entity that owns the two healthcare facilities, is going to be improving Mercy Care Lane from Western Avenue to the rear of Spark. And in doing that, there's some idea that a right turn lane will be placed here, so that people turning right will have a way to get out. If you envision this in your head, that right turn lane could be parallel to Mercy Care or it could be parallel to Western. And in some ways that you envision it, it could jeopardize the location of our electronic sign.
Mark is not too happy.
So if the sign comes down, personally, I think it's an extremely effective tool, and we might want to look for a way to get it back up, either right away, moved,
Or encourage them to take the space from the other side.
right, yeah, maybe they could take the space from the other side, that's great, that's a great idea. There's probably rules about where sidewalks are and stuff, but that could happen, so I like that, yeah, good call. So I just wanna make you aware that, we might have to move the sign, so. And then lastly, the heat pumps update, basically the paperwork for the project is done. It's a 370-page engineering manual. I don't understand, but that's the way it is. We had Gerben and Ferlazzo review all that paperwork, and we had the 10-Ike group review it. Both suggested some changes. ME Engineering had no problem with the changes, so incorporated it. The bid has been advertised, and next Monday, Tuesday the 16th, at 9 a.m. there's a walkthrough for contractors who are interested in bidding on it. And then the bid is basically open from January 15th to February 9th. On February 9th in the afternoon, there's a meeting to open the bids. And then we're required to take the lowest responsible bid. The word responsible in this sense means if there's some reason that the company appears unable to do the job and they have the low bid, we can say we don't think that's a responsible bid. But, we're hoping to get a nice low bid, and
Tim's gonna ask you something.
Yeah.
Just quick, so have the possible renovations been considered as part of doing the heat pumps?
yes, so the engineering firm has always known that we were considering renovation. They think that the existing, obviously you'd need more heat pumps over new space, but the existing infrastructure is wide enough, big enough
That they
to-
just add to it?
to extend out that amount of square footage. However, the desire to put in a sprinkler system in the future requires a new water service from Winding Brook or Mercy Care into the building, and that's part of this bid. We do expect different contractors to bid on the heat pump project versus the water service part of it. But the water service part of it, in terms of what we think the dollars are gonna be, is about 10 times smaller. The last estimates we had for heat pumps from any contractor were around 250,000, and the only estimate we have for the water service is around 25,000. So,
That's just adding.
A
so
pipe.
it's to the,
yeah, a 4-inch pipe, so.
yeah,
And I've been sharing that all along with Peter Barber. He appreciates that we're sharing it, but it's not actually the town that's improving Mercy Care Lane, it's a private company, and he was going to get me the name of who to communicate with there, but he was like, we appreciate what you're saying, but it's not that big a deal to dig a hole and put in a water pipe at any point in time, so. So that's the heat pumps update.
Great. All right, thank you, Tim.
There have been a number of companies that have been calling and expressing interest, so that's good.
If you remember, after the walkthrough, can you just let us know maybe how many contractors had come through, just so we can kind of an idea? Thank you. Finance committee.
yeah, I don't know anything about the 75 capital reserve transfer.
That's me, basically. So at our last meeting, you guys asked us to, or I asked you actually, if we could move that 75,000 that we got from the Pat Fahey's office for the lighting project into capital reserve. And when I was doing that over at NBT Bank, I just decided to ask, and it turned out we were transferring it from the operating fund into capital reserve, and there's a lower interest rate in capital reserve. So I said, well, let's hold off and we'll ask them again. seems to me we should just keep it where it is, but not, of course, spend it on anything until the end of the fiscal year, because even though it's, I think it was 0.15 versus 0.20, but it just didn't seem to make sense.
Well, especially if Carol's saying we're not gonna have a separate account necessarily.
Yeah, that's true too, yeah.
Not you, Carol, the other Carol.
They did not. Yeah. Yep, so find out,
Find out why that's the case.
But I thought we need a resolution to kind of rescind our last resolution.
yeah,
So, and I was going to told Tim to hold off and basically violate the resolution. So I think we need a resolution, either just simply stating rescinding our resolution, or resolution
Well-
to tell us to not transfer the money.
Or find out
Was-
why that
was-
other account and have an equivalent. Yeah.
Was the resolution to
one's a
transfer
money
into
market,
an account
one's
or
not, is kind of
transfer
basic,
into
but why can't it be a
Or
money,
money market.
yeah.
a fund? It doesn't have to be into an account. I mean,
We
We can
should
tran-
have the minutes. What is it, the
if you're
minutes?
transferring it into the fund, it doesn't have to be in that account. Just,
It was to move, and it says the account.
Okay.
I don't know why we have a resolution for that.
Could have just done it.
Yeah, I mean, move money in accounts, it's nothing to do with us.
Either way, is there a motion I would say to rescind this motion. I mean, it seems to make the most sense to me.
And I know that you've told me to do these other things, like find out why it can't be a money market.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to, it's a two-part motion, to rescind that motion, was it last meeting?
Yeah.
From the
Well,
last meeting regarding transferring the $75,000 funds into the account and just transfer it into the fund.
then you're making a separate motion.
Yeah, I don't think you have to rescind it if you're making a separate motion, right? I mean, you just,
I-
why rescind it? Cause you're making a new
The one
decision.
Put it in the fund instead of the
precedes the
account.
other.
Right, you're
Yeah.
just making a new motion,
Yes.
right? So,
Transfer it
yeah.
on our books, but not into the fund.
Well, I get,
Not into
the
the
reason I think
account.
you have to rescind is because if you're looking at this from a, like,
Well,
if you're a
it
history
doesn't
standpoint, you're gonna think it's transferred to the, so you're gonna think the money is now in our capital reserve account, it is now also in our capital reserve fund. You're not gonna know, if I was looking at this, and I was
Rather-
auditors,
yeah.
you wouldn't know where the money is.
Just say, what if we just say, rather than transferring it into the account?
I would be more comfortable with two separate motions.
Okay.
Okay. Motion
Do
to
that.
rescind,
Motion to rescind those funds.
to rescind last month's,
Resolution.
yeah,
Motion to.
Motion. to transfer $75,000 into capital reserve account. Okay, so, second?
Second.
Second by Carol. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion adopted.
I'd like to make a motion to transfer it into the capital reserve funds on our books only.
Okay. Alright, now you guys got that? You want me to give you a second to write down?
Thank you.
Okay, alright, we guys finished at the same time. Okay, can I get a second? Second by Barbara, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we got that squared away.
But to be clear, the original action didn't take place.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I told him to do that,
Welcome to my report.
yes.
So, we had an audit RFP review ad hoc meeting, I'll start with that. We had that meeting on Monday to review the RFPs to determine what company we would hire to do the audit for the next 3 years. So 3 companies gave us RFPs. What we discovered in the midst of that was that TBC apparently never got notified about the RFPs, about submitting an RFP, and they want to submit an RFP, and we want them to be able to do that. So they have until tomorrow to do that. So we're gonna meet again, probably just by phone or through email to look over that and decide which of the 4 companies we're gonna recommend to the board.
It sounds like you've already ranked them, and you're just trying to
Yes.
see where TBC falls in that rank.
Correct, so there's one of the 3 that we decided they're out.
Okay.
And then the other 2 were both, good, we thought, ones that the board could consider. One was cheaper than the other, but the other one was bigger. One that was more expensive was bigger and had more experience, and the committee kind of felt like they had more expertise than the smaller one, which is giving us a little better price. So that's basically what the committee, we didn't decide yet, but that's what our discussion was.
You may not know this, but how does TBC's size fit into that? Are they smaller than?
They're closer to the big one,
Okay.
yeah. And what they're charging us is just a little bit less than what the bid was for that company, so it's basically the same. They actually said they'd give us a 2% discount if we pay on time, which brings it down to the same cost pretty much as TBC. So that's the ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee, just as a reminder, is myself, Carol, Cott, and Alex Zane. And then we just met for the first, the finance committee just met prior to this meeting for the first budget review, and we went over numbers for the budget, and we're doing more research. Different members of the staff are doing more research and bringing back to us for the next meeting, which I think is like 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember the dates.
Well, it's kind of important.
Oh.
You said that you were
And we didn't.
looking at.
All right. Maybe we'll review that then. Remind me after the meeting.
Before we go.
Talk about it. So that's it.
Thank you. Just on an aside, so hopefully people are, and I know Chris is, doing these minutes. Does the entire board want to see the minutes to these meetings? Is that something you guys would like, or?
We're required to do the minutes.
Yeah.
By the bylaws. So it's just a question of whether we send them to the whole board.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of asking. Does everyone want to see these minutes, or do you think, what's that?
Then you just put them in the packet.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Is it good just to put them into the packet at our meeting, or does everyone want them emailed? Yeah.
We'll turn them into the,
I would
to
send
the
them an
director
email.
or something, that he can have the, after the meeting at which they're discussed, and then he can arrange to have whatever is sent out.
Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time I'm at the meeting in question anyway, so if the form gets done right away, I can just walk away with it.
So,
I gave Jenna the one for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Wow.
They'll go in the packet of the board. But you'd get them an email ahead of time, and then you'd have a hard copy in the packet. Right, yeah.
right, so we do want them emailed at a time. I mean, sometimes my email gets too much stuff, so.
Well, I don't know about the personnel committee minutes, so if there are personnel issues discussed, we might not want those minutes to go out until after the board meeting at which any decision might be made.
Good point.
Alright, so then,
Yeah, I mean, minutes for personnel committee could be simply if there was no action taken. So who met, who wasn't there, and no action was taken.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be minutes.
A general idea
Yeah,
of what was.
depending on
What
the,
was discussed.
you know, the
Salaries were
agenda of
discussed
the
or
something.
meeting.
Yeah, general idea.
So then it could be vague.
alright. So then I'll figure out something to do with minutes. Okay, personnel, labor management?
Okay, since some personnel issues were discussed, I'd make a motion that we go into executive session.
Would it be possible to do this at the end, so we only go into once, or do you,
It doesn't make any difference to me. We
is
can
there a
go
strong
back
feeling
into
either way from the board?
Make one session.
Okay,
Okay,
alright, so we'll table this to executive session at the end.
okay,
Is it, so it's all executive session though?
yeah.
Okay, alright, policy committee?
It was canceled due to the snow.
You guys can't catch a break.
What we're in the process of rescheduling, but Jenna has done some great work on revising the meeting room form. And when revising the form, it does kind of raise a few questions about meeting room use policies. So I'm going to start with the form, and when we discuss the form, and then hopefully advance it to the full board for approval, we may have some policy questions. We really don't know what they are at this point, but we'll have a more productive thing to say after we've met. So, good enough? Okay.
Alright, UHLS.
Okay, the meeting of the Upper Hudson library system was yesterday. And at that meeting, it was discussed that we're waiting for the governor's budget, which will be out by the 17th of January. The 16th is the, is the limit for that. And Tim Burke has testified concerning the library funding at the Assembly hearings. Assemblywoman Dee Dee Barrett is now the head of the library committee in the Assembly. Apparently, the library committee chairman does not get a stipend, so people do not stay in that position for more than a couple of years. And Tim was hoping that maybe sometime in the near future, Pat Fahey might ascend to that position. But he testified both on behalf of Upper Hudson and NYLA, which he also is chairman of. February 28th, I'd like to remind people again that that's Library Advocacy Day, and we should try to arrange how we're going to react to that, with regard to carpools or
Yeah, we usually do have a good turnout.
how we're going to do that. They are planning to have a training at the Upper Hudson concerning that Advocacy Day and how it's going to be treated.
And I'm registered for that training. I haven't spoken to Mark yet, but I presume he'd be interested in that. And then
Every year.
in terms of the carpooling and such, the moment to do it is when they announce the schedule of when we get to meet with Assemblymember Fahey and Senator Amador. But when that happens, if we get a good draw, hopefully those of us that go can all go to the Ginger Man or something to have some lunch. Not the Ginger Man, right? So not there anymore, but someplace like that.
Something else is there now.
Washington Tavern or whatever.
You could fill your car then and tie people to the trunk and like Mitt Romney's dog.
I give the same speech every year, but so I work in the legislature. It makes a huge difference going. Like when legislators see that a lot of constituents care about the library, they fight that much harder. I'm telling you, it really does matter. So I strongly, if you can go, it'll be the most valuable thing you do for to advocate for your state legislators. Going to see them in person, your voice really does matter. Trust me, they know how many people are there, and they're making their decisions on what they're supporting based on how many people come to these events. And there are hundreds of lobbying events, so they are seeing tons of people. So when they see a lot from the library, it's a good thing.
What day is this again?
The
Yeah,
28th of February.
Wednesday, February
Friday.
28th.
Bless you.
At 8:30 in the morning, that Fahey's open.
Before that, though,
That's
Pat
good.
Fahey is having an open house so that people can go to see her and talk to her. And I don't know if you want to bring people with you then too, but you want to comment on that?
Sure, that's Friday, January 26th at 8:30 in the morning. So I will be planning to go down there and could certainly pick people up.
Say again the date?
Or Pat Fahey?
Friday, January 26th, for Pat Fahey's open house.
Thank you.
I do
Oh, it's the
agree that it's
26th.
valuable to go,
January 26th.
but both events
Oh.
are so populated that that's not really where you get a chance to talk to Pat Fahey,
But she does notice that.
She notices
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
there,
yeah.
you get your picture,
There are libraries.
they put the picture on the website, and we put the picture on our website, yep, so.
And if you, I don't know if you're in touch with Yvette Terplack at all.
I know her, but.
Yeah, because
so-
she
Want me
So
to
if you
just
happen-
make a note to contact you?
Yeah, if you happen to be in touch with her.
Okay.
Anyway, the annual celebration is June the 19th, which is a Tuesday this year, at the Hilton Garden Inn in Troy. So this is the event where different programs and different people get awards for their accomplishments in the library system, and sometimes Guilderland does have nominees for that. We've had winners too. So, hopefully we will have nominees this year, and maybe we'll have, people who will be awarded recognition for their library activities.
For people that are new to the board, that it's a free dinner. And your spouse would have to pay if they want to go, but they probably don't.
Herb, what was that date? What was that date, sir?
June the 19th.
Very well, thank you.
And this year, since it's at the Hilton Garden Inn, there may be more displays, because last time, the venue for the dinner did not work itself, into, displays from the various libraries and their activities. Okay. There were descriptions voted on at the meeting for the titles of administrative system support associate and manager administration and finance, and the functions of these positions at the Upper Hudson Library had been changed and modified, and the board voted on that. There was also a discussion of a draft for paid family leave for staff. And so that will be it, because that is something new, and Upper Hudson being a 503C does have to have that. So that was discussed also. I invited the board members yesterday evening to go from the meeting in Albany to the Guilderland Library to watch Frankenstein. And I don't know that any of them did, but I did give them the opportunity to do that, as well as discussing the coup that the library had making available the first copies in the library system of Fire and Fury. And so people, had some comments on that too.
Positive? Or
Mostly
jealous?
positive, yeah. Yeah, apparently, I guess a lot of the people who want to read it aren't customers of the Guilderland Library per se. But, in the interlibrary loan, the holds have to be, taken, but, it would be thought that in the near future, some of the other libraries might be able to pick up copies of the book also, so our list of people might decline a bit. And that's pretty much the Upper Hudson Library System report.
Thank you, Herb. Foundation, Chris.
There was no meeting.
There was no meeting. I did talk to Rosemary yesterday, and she said that it was a interesting conversation which took place partly on email and partly on voicemail, so I didn't actually talk to her. But I believe that the foundation meets next Thursday, and one of the matters that they're going to take up is what sort of fundraising they want to do in 2018. And as she said to me on voicemail, some people will be for a gala, and some people will be for a cocktail party, and some people will be for neither, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be discussed whenever they meet, which I presume is next Thursday.
I'll be on vacation
Okay,
voice that the board would really like to do a gala.
okay.
What day is it? You said
It's
I'll gotta go.
Thursday, the
6:30.
18th. Yeah, next Thursday be the 18th.
The other thing to bring up is that, is the project, Paul Mays project, and that, I think the whole idea of funding, of, trying to raise money for certain rooms is a good idea, especially for a new children's programming room, a new children's drop-in area,
Sure.
a new children's room.
You mean so like they'd be named after someone? Is that the kind of idea?
Yeah, try to get $1 million.
Yeah, well, they've been saying they wanted to know
The
what
Leah's room?
specifically we wanted.
Exactly.
Many of the libraries have appeals, they give mailings to the community or certain members of the community that might be receptive to it, to raise money without actually giving them something in return, like a
Did-
dinner.
Didn't they just
The
do that?
foundation just, did that. I don't know, did it get sent out?
Yeah,
I think it
yeah.
just went out a week or couple
Yeah.
weeks ago.
It went out right before the end of the year, they brought in about $1 grand.
Okay.
Okay. But
This is the first year of doing that.
The
Yes.
libraries have done it too, you know, and I don't know if any of those libraries have foundations who do it, but the library board had done it, at least according to the, delegates at the, Upper Hudson.
I personally would be concerned about both entities doing it. I think either one or the other. And since we've gone down the road of the foundation doing it, maybe that's the way to go.
And would you say that their recommendation do have a gala? Is that what you said?
Our recommendation.
Oh, it is? Oh,
I would think it is.
oh,
You want
I
to
mean,
no, I didn't know if there was a discussion,
Well, there was a discussion on this
Yeah.
past year that
yeah.
we were disappointed that they didn't do a gala. And then they
Gala
went
raises
here.
big
That's-
money.
That's actually, let's have that, because originally I think their idea for having it here in the library as a cocktail reception was kind of came from this board.
Yeah.
So, let,
It was specifically for the anniversary.
Right, that was an anniversary, that wasn't a gala, it was an anniversary, you know,
Right.
celebration.
And the idea wasn't to not do it, I think the idea was to do both.
It's a lot of work for them to do every year, so, yeah, so this.
But they can raise 20 grand doing it, where
Yeah,
they
the
basically
gala, we
raise
didn't
much
have
at
a
all
gala
without
last
having it.
year, so this year would be the year to have the gala, which would raise about twice as much money as a cocktail party.
And I personally will tell them that from where I sat, which was pretty close to people like Brian and Aaron who did a lot of the work, it seemed to me like a pretty similar amount of work to put on a cocktail party.
I wasn't involved in the cocktail, but it maybe Mark could speak to it more, because he may have been involved, but it seemed like, yeah, it did seem like it was still a ton of work.
There was a lot of, a lot of the tasks had to be done, a lot of the same tasks, gala versus cocktail party. While we thought it would be less work to do the cocktail party here, it proved to be untrue. It was as much work, with the added stress of having to close the library, get it shut down, and get it put back together again. I thought it was a great idea when I suggested it, it came off. So, just because that work doesn't mean we need to do that again. Just because it worked doesn't mean we need to do that
What
again.
was the number again?
Say again?
What was the number, how much?
I'm sorry, what was the,
Raised.
I don't remember how much we brought in, but it was not as much as the gala.
Like 8,000?
8,000 or something like that. I don't have the exact number in front of me.
Alright, well, do we wanna come up with a board recommendation, or
That's a great idea.
do we wanna recommend them to do so the original thought was why you would do it at a dinner time was it allowed people to kinda stop in and leave. I don't know if it seemed like most people did that.
No.
So we didn't kinda get the crowd that we wanted, we were hoping for a more like business type crowd to kinda come, stop in, got their money off and leave.
It was the same.
Yeah, it's the
Or less
same-
than the same people.
The same 30 people, so.
It was a good, it was a good crowd.
It was a good
No, it was,
160.
Oh, was it?
it was
No,
100,
I was
you had
joking.
160, you had 160 people in that room between those two areas. And that's commensurate, that's, I think, more than what you had at the gala, okay? Now,
Really?
They're spending twice as much.
well, compared to the gala we had over at, where was the last one we had? Yeah, so, anyway, you know, we can draw the people, the foundation can draw the people. It's just,
So you had more people that made half as much?
yeah, because here's what didn't happen, we had the, we didn't have all the silent auction items that we had. We didn't have that volume, okay? The cost of the amount of bite that the caterer took out of the ticket price was a lot higher for this thing than it was over there, okay? And the, you know, and there was a lot of, expenses, posters, promotional material and stuff that we didn't necessarily have to do for the gala, so.
But I think it's asking for an annual fundraiser, right? That was just a celebration, so it should be 20 plus. I mean, if you're gonna do, but what's another suggestion on a fundraiser, not necessarily, I mean, it might be a gala, but whatever, you know, people. It would be a good opportunity to raise money.
So do we wanna make a motion on a recommendation? Or we would like, and we're just giving a recommendation to the foundation, they can take it or leave it, I just wanna make sure that's
You don't really
clear.
need a motion, do you? Just, you know,
Alright,
That's what you liaison, right? That's what I'm saying.
okay, alright. So then I'll hopefully be able to make it and talk to them. Okay,
So
staff,
you're gonna convey that?
yeah, I'll convey it.
Yeah, and if if you don't, I'll be there, so.
Bring up the whole idea of fundraising,
Yeah, fundraising.
using the naming rights. And-
Okay,
And that they should discuss that. Or, we're doing a building project. Which we're gonna do a project, I think, just a question of what we're doing.
Alright, staff directors?
Okay, so we covered First Columbia already. We will cover later, unless you wanna cover it now, the land transfer, that's in my, monthly report. Covered personnel, meeting room use. I did go to the Directors Association monthly meeting where, one of the components of that meeting was a Catholic Charities presentation on opioid training. So I went through that. In short, the state has not yet given us the boilerplate policy that they will require us to pass before we can decide, you know, if we decide to have opioid training for the staff, we have to pass a boilerplate policy, but they haven't written it yet. So nothing's required of you at this point other than to keep your eyes and ears open and think about, for example, at this training, Scott Jarzambek, the director of the Albany Public Library, is sitting next to me. Scott has administered Narcan at APL himself 7 times. And they have had 1 death in the Albany Public Library since Scott has been the director, which was about 3 years ago. And I'm sure you've read and gone to programs and so forth. This is not simply an urban issue, it's also a suburban issue. So, you know, just keep educating yourself. Caitlin, I think, sends me stuff every now and then. I don't know if you're sending that to other people as well.
Oh, I haven't been, I can, excuse me.
No, I get too many emails as this.
It is-
Well, you can send other people.
It is more an urban issue that the suburban people are getting their drugs in Albany.
Oh, are they? They go down there to get their drugs? Okay.
And they often end up there,
Mhm.
homeless there, you know.
You get a lot of homeless in the library too.
Yeah, and we honestly do not.
They're ex-Gilman residents that are Albany residents now.
Did anyone read that article from, I think it was in Times Union, one of the kids who grew up here and he's now under the
Yeah.
Easy Pass, and
His dad spoke here as part of the panel. Yeah.
it's very sad.
Troy Miller has finished all his work. He's a great guy to work with. He installed the last of the exterior doors on the west end of the library. And so now I can get down to closing out the roof grant paperwork. As I say here, just a reminder that we got the roof and loading dock done by state ed accounting for $86,000 less than we said we were going to get it done. So over the last year and a half or so, we've had to spend $86,000 on the building in order to not have to give it back to state ed. We've now done that, and I just have to finish the paperwork. I'm really, really proud of our staff for, especially Margaret Lanou, for kicking off the book drive for the kids in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We sent 1,214 books. We used no public money to ship it, no taxpayer money. The public donated over $300 to ship these books, and 6 or 7 other libraries in Upper Hudson also sent books. We had another, Senator Amador seems to do it every other year, the Cell Phones for Soldiers Drive. That was very successful. And then Beth Rienti coordinated an effort where staff and patrons knitted hats for preemie babies, and we sent out 31 hats. So we really were community-minded in December, which was awesome. And we still are community-minded. We just aren't knitting hats at the moment. But what we are doing at the moment is trying to get everybody to log the books that they read on guilderlandlibrary.org/beanstack. And we had set a goal of 300 books for the month of January, and we're close to 600 right now. So we keep raising the bar, and that's going well. I'm also very proud of the staff for having the first intergenerational sing-along over at Our Lady of Mercy. So they took a bunch of kids over to Our Lady of Mercy, where about 40 residents sang with them, and it's just a really nice way to combine generations and be good neighbors. Programming, as we all know, is very, very successful here. Our staff is doing a great job. This current newsletter just blew my socks off when I was proofreading it, and but these people are, they have such a great spirit that they actually had It's Never Too Cold for Ice Cream program on a day on an evening when the temperature was 8 below. Another good thing is we have 91 kids signed up for our effort to have individual kids read 1,000 books before they go to kindergarten. And we have 9 who've completed their 1,000 books, which is awesome. We had 300 more people attend kids programs in December of 2017 over December of 2016, 340 or so. And I'm cherry picking numbers, but our Wi-Fi usage December to December was up about 25% with about 500 more uses. And then I, at the last minute, stuck this thing in your packets. That is a graphic representation of electronic item use. It came to us from Upper Hudson. And, spend 5 minutes looking at it, but overall last year the use of electronic resources at Guilderland went up 18%. The use of electronic books only went up 5%, but audiobooks, e-audiobooks went up 37%. Magazines went up 61%, and that's because Flipster, the new program, is so much easier to use than Overdrive was for magazines. Streaming video is up 117%. And then if you look at the back of this, it gives you kind of progressions. So you can see that, ebooks are kind of leveling off, but audiobooks are spiking. Then this page compares the e-circulation to the physical circulation. And it's just worth a couple of minutes of your time. Physical, as a total circulation, physical is still 90% of the overall circulation. But the growth we're seeing right now is in the electronic circulation. And as we were talking about earlier in the Finance Committee meeting, physical item circulation is actually rather flat. It's, I think, 35 or 40% of it, one of these things says, is DVDs. So it's great that we're still big on DVDs. Their top 5 circulating items for the month are in Phil's monthly report. 4 of them are DVDs, and the 5th is a Wi-Fi hotspot. So programming and circulating things other than print books are really where we're seeing growth. And we were discussing in the Finance Committee that one of the key findings of the survey that Paul Mays conducted is that people are expressing a desire for more traditional collections. And they are expressing that desire on surveys, but not at the circulation desk. We have to think about that when we decide where to allocate resources. But we can keep watching month to month, and hopefully that'll
the
work.
surveys they're putting it on, how are they being distributed? Is that like email surveys? Or
We
is
did
it
an email, we did in the lobby where you could do an exercise by putting a dot on a different section of a big flip chart. We did it at public meetings. The public meetings were not particularly well attended, which is why we did the flip chart kind of thing. And people did that on their way in and on their way out.
We
So,
believe that it's because there's always a waiting list for new items.
yeah.
They're thinking you need to buy more than new books.
Mhm.
Some of that is the new books are only new for like 3 months
Mhm. Yeah.
or 6 months, and then
Off they go.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're obsolete.
So even an incredible case of demand like this, Fire and Fury, we're up to 6 physical copies. So the Enterprise article that's out today would say that we have 3, but we've gotten it up to 6. That's probably, we're probably not gonna go a lot more than 6, you know, we might add another 1 or 2 if they show up. But the demand will fall, pretty quickly for something like that. But the real popular, like John Grisham and, James Patterson and so forth, some of those we get about a dozen, copies, and then, send them out. So that's basically, the staff and
Great
director's
dashboards,
report.
those are.
I'd like to make a
That's
correction.
great.
Okay, I'm sorry, first, Karen, if you don't mind, I didn't hear you.
No, I'm just saying those are great dashboards, that's a great
Good.
presentation, you continue,
Good,
put it
thank
in
you.
the chart every time.
I don't wanna take responsibility just because they came from Upper Hudson, but I'll take them.
No,
So-
but you've got yours, I mean, you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
take some of your comparisons, you know, and
Yep.
that's a great
Okay.
benchmark.
Super. And Chris?
Well, you were talking about the personnel committee meeting, I think you meant personnel management members, not
Right.
personnel committee members.
Yes, so what, is that page 1 or page 2?
It's page 1 where you say we held a personnel committee meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, one of our staff called
2
me. on
newest personnel management members just changed committee to management.
Yeah.
That's what you meant.
Yep.
Question, has anybody, sort of complained about being staff that they have to sort of reveal what they're reading to an outside source rather than people that are.
Nobody has complained about that, but that's a good question. I'll ask nobody's complained to me. Elizabeth Smith is the young librarian who's in charge of that. I'll ask her if anybody has, because it has occurred to me as I've been logging our books that, Beanstack, who are they? What are they doing with this information? And they're presumably saying Tim is 53, yeah, he read these 3 books, and,
And where does that
so-
get marketed to, or,
Mhm.
it's just a question I have.
Sure.
And for Mark Cuban to give 25,000, that's like spitting.
That's lunch for him,
That
so,
isn't even lunch, it's
yeah.
not even breakfast.
Mhm.
I mean, and for this, they have everybody's email and what you've read, and that just sort of bothered me.
Mhm. Well, I'll see if anybody knows.
Everybody's got our emails, I swear.
Well, but we are,
Everybody
you
plus
know,
one.
we tell our readers so much here in the
Yeah.
library, and now we're asking them to disseminate all their private stuff
There's
on the internet.
There's 2 values to the reader. I mean, one reason I'm doing it is to try to help raise the 25,000, but you can always go back in and get a list of what you've read, which is nice, because I don't know about you, but I sometimes forget if I've read a certain book. And then, what's the other value? It just, for us as a library, when there's a goal, people might read more, like, all 3 members of my family have,
The only
consciously
thing,
done.
I did see
Yeah.
where they said, we will not use your information
Right.
for, advertising
Yeah.
or any other purposes, and usually when you have something like this, you get those kinds of disclosures, so it just sort of troubled me that, what are you gonna do with all this stuff?
I'm curious too, so I'll look into it. There may be someone at Mary Fellows at Upper Hudson may know the answer to that question. She's the youth coordinator, so, or Elizabeth at our library.
Making a motion to accept the staff and director's report as amended.
Second.
Second by Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright, unanimous. Put my agenda down. Okay. New business, looks like we don't have any. So then we can just go, does anyone have any new business? No? Alright, go to old business, opioid overdose training.
So we kind of covered that. I don't know if Caitlin, if you happen to want to add anything, but we're sort of in a holding pattern there. I'm going to recommend that we go through that staff training, in part because my staff wants to do that, and in part because we might save somebody's life. The it's interesting, I was talking to Jeff Kirkpatrick of Bethlehem, who's the director there. Whereas our staff has asked me repeatedly to provide this training, his staff through their union is saying, we don't want any part of that. You know, so there are two sides to the issue. Our staff,
There's a rivalry between Gilsland and Bethlehem.
there is that too.
And what's the negative side?
Just a responsibility.
There's a concern about liability and responsibility, but,
Good Samaritan and probably,
yeah,
really it.
It doesn't?
It-
No, that it wouldn't.
it does, but
It does,
people
but
think
I mean,
that it
people
doesn't.
think that it
But
doesn't.
I mean, education would certainly take care of that.
Yep. I mean, you know, the life you save could be your own family member, you know, so, so anyway.
Neighbor, anything.
Yeah, well, good think it better.
So we'll be coming back to you about that. In terms of the fine-free initiative, the next directors meeting, as you remember from December, this came up at the December directors meeting, and it did not come up then at the January directors meeting, in part because they consciously telescoped that meeting to 1 hour so that they could have the opioid training. And I do think there are quite a few library directors who are interested in this, but at the moment, nothing is required of us other than if you wanna, look at that email that Joe Burke sent, that I sent you, that Joe Burke put together. You know, there's lots of interesting articles there. I've read about half of them myself, you know. It's just hard to get to everything, you know. I read them at lunch and sometimes at night, but
They don't count toward the books we read, right?
they do not, they do not. You can't put articles down.
They were good.
I wanna, since I'm thinking about it though, mention one thing there, and you may or may not agree with me, but, I was reading Pat Fahey's email last week, legislative update, and, she mentioned that, there's legislation now, to end something called lunch shaming, which is where a kid is in the lunch line and figures out that they can't pay, and they're told right in front of other people, you can't pay, you can't have lunch. I personally see a connection between that and the circulation desk and the $5 or $10 of fines that you might
Oh,
get,
yes,
you
the
know.
fines.
So,
Cuomo has asked for banning legislation on that,
on the lunch thing,
on the lunch shaming, because in many school districts, and actually, I wondered, our school district doesn't do it, do they?
I don't think so.
They don't say they can't have a lunch, what they do is they say you can't have this lunch, you have a cheese sandwich.
Okay.
A cold lunch.
Mhm.
And that points out, therefore, that something's wrong.
Mhm.
And in some school districts, apparently, they make them wear a sort of bracelet
Mhm.
or put a little pin on, and I find this really repulsive.
It's kinda like the dunce cap, you know,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
which went out 150 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually emailed Pat on it, and I said, please don't let this get overlooked, because it doesn't cost anything to come up with a bill for this, to say, hey, no shaming of these kids, it's not their fault.
Well, there's a percentage of kids who qualify for free lunch, and maybe that program should be more publicized so that, you know, if there is a kid who cannot afford lunch, that they might be able to get that, but you know, you don't know, maybe the kid spends his money on something else, and parent gives him the money, and he wastes on something else, or a bully takes it away from him or something, you know.
Mhm. All kinds of options.
Yeah.
But at some point, the fine-free initiative will come back.
It's the same idea.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
You know,
I grew up in the Depression,
Mhm.
and in World War One, and if it hadn't been for the library, I got a book at Christmas. That was a Christmas present,
Mhm.
and it was wonderful, but the library is what, and I don't know if we had fines in those days.
I bet you did.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know.
But
I bet you
I
did.
probably wouldn't have been able to afford them, but I did, I always got it back.
Fines are also kind of a touchy subject. Like, I put this Facebook post out, I think it was last Friday night when we closed early because of the weather. And, I just said,
World War One, World War Two.
I wondered, but,
I was thinking the same thing.
I realized I said that. It wasn't depression though.
anyway, I put this Facebook post out in conjunction conjunction with Phil Berardi, who was off that day, and I said, let's just relax the fines for the weekend. And it got like 100 likes, which is about 90 more likes than our average post. And it got, you know, all kinds of comments where people said, oh, what a great gesture. And then the one guy who's kind of the realist, who said, gee, thanks for saving me 25 cents. But, you know, it's sort of like some people say the price of gasoline as an economic indicator. Like, you know, it's nowhere near as much as the cost of groceries, yet when it rises by $1, everything slows down in the economy, you know. And so even though fines are only 20 cents, or in some cases $1 for like a DVD or whatever, people seem to think more of that amount of money than it really is, you know. So
It's not necessarily the money. I think we're concerned about is people are just going to hang on to books,
right.
you know, forever, or not forever, but really until like they get the notice that they have to pay.
Right.
I noticed so in the budget, we do get quite a bit of money from the
Mhm.
fines.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit in the budget
35 to
committee.
40 grand.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
But 12 of it, as of last year, was kids. So
About 12 was
12,000,
kids.
yeah, 13 maybe, between 12 and 13. So anyway, so fine free will come back at some point. So I think it's great the way we've been dealing with it, is just to chat a little bit, and when we have to make a decision, we will. Can I go to the land
Yeah,
transfer?
yeah. that's
Okay,
great.
so at the last minute here, Chris Lanchanton prepared a very nice document, which looks like this, and is in your packet. Contract for transfer of real estate. And this has been in conjunction with Brian and myself and Neil Sanders. And Neil now has had it for about a day, and we think that it addresses everything Neil needs from the district's point of view, but we haven't quite heard back yet. The district has a board meeting on January 23rd, at which they hope to, I believe, finalize the matter. So I'll drop Neil an email tomorrow and just say, have you had a chance to look at this yet? Does it meet your needs? You know, I believe you and I know I've read it, and I think you have, and,
Yeah.
you know, it looks good to us.
Yeah.
So then we have a resolution which I'll pass around, which Chris Lanchanton also wrote, that we'd like to ask you to consider, because we don't want to have to call a special board meeting in February in reaction to what happens on January 23rd at the district. Like, we want to sort of basically get this group on record as saying we wish to do the transfer, and we authorize you to do the transfer. So that's what this resolution says.
Should the resolution say and or instead of the executive director and or board president? I just noticed that this contract has just got a signature for you, not just you and Brian.
Well, we could address that by adding Brian's signature, or by just saying and or. I'm fine either way.
Yeah, I'd rather do and or. I don't want my signature on. Necessarily need to be on.
I would like to just change it to and or, so.
Where are you?
Authorize
have
the,
that yet.
oh, you didn't get it.
Oh.
It just says, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Green Public Library hereby authorizes the transfer
Oh,
of
okay, thank you.
2 vacant parcels of land, this is the addresses, to the Berlin Central School District, and authorizes the executive director and or board president to execute any and all documents to effectuate the transfer on the library's behalf.
I'm fine with that, certainly.
How do you want to change it again? Authorizes the executive director and
And
or?
or board president. That way, Tim can sign it by himself, the deed, doesn't have to be Brian.
Let me get Brian.
Which and there's no place for me to sign anyway. So.
Right. It's been drawn up just for Tim to sign it. I make a motion to, do this
To
resolution.
accept the resolution.
Accept the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll
Proposed
second.
resolution.
As modified, right?
As modified. Seconded by Caitlin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. All right. So hopefully this is going to be resolved. I'm very excited. Thank you, Tim, for all your hard work on this.
Thanks,
Tim
Chris.
gives me way too much credit. I am just merely looking at emails and saying, go ahead.
Chris Champton did great work on it too, and she was on jury duty last week, but got this done at the
Yeah,
same time.
Karen
This
had
is
stepped down.
actually the most impressive I've seen Chris. She was great at this. She's phenomenal. Yeah, thank you also to Chris. Okay, then
Like, let me just ask though, if Neil Sanders has minor changes to this document, does that resolution cover them?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Vote on that
We
too.
just,
Oh, we
voted on
can,
this
I just-
resolution, anything that changed was
But that
put
should
at
be
the end of
in
the
the
order,
Um,
or because we want a spot for Tim. If we
We
do
do
it,
it.
Second vote.
I'm okay for either way.
Yeah,
She's in favor.
yeah.
okay.
So,
Yeah, so I read this as they are essentially giving us all the authority to execute this as whatever may arise. So
Yeah.
We already did the artist, so I would do that.
okay, so
no more.
minutes of the last board meeting.
I make motion. Go ahead, Barbara.
Moved by Barbara,
Who's in?
seconded by
No, anybody else?
anyone.
Noreen.
By Noreen, seconded by Noreen. Thank you. It's tough when you're all the way down there. All right, seconded by Noreen. All those in favor?
table.
Yeah.
Four of us who have to abstain from this.
Very good.
And there's everyone who
it's
wasn't
all
at the last meeting has to abstain.
Right.
So everyone who's was absent has to abstain. So you guys
Do you see that?
Okay, what?
Just
Everyone
four of
who's
us.
in here, yeah.
Peter, Karen, Amy,
Oh,
Carol.
that's right, I can't vote.
Well, they can, but, you know, they usually don't.
Yes.
Carol.
Carol and Amy.
Okay.
We forget to do.
Yeah. Didn't I said? Didn't I? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Adopted unanimously. All right. And now lastly, executive session.
Is that we doing that?
Moved by Peter, seconded by Karen.
I'm gonna run the meeting as Karen.
Karen.
Oh, what was it?
No, it's Peter. It's
Peter and
Karen.
Karen.
Peter and Karen. Okay. All right. So we've entered executive.
Carlos, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Don,
Thank you very much.
thanks for coming.
Like a card or anything in case you want to get in touch with me.
Oh, yeah, you'll stay for a while.
Email down just in case.
I get the newsletters electronically, so I should be there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I have to.
It's okay, in the last
Really
meeting,
glad
that's
that you
everything
came. I
that
hope
was
you
supposed to be
had as much fun as we did.
I wrote 7, so I was like, why would we have an executive session at 7 o'clock? Everything was bad.
That was a bigger one, but executive.
Yeah.
Shut off the camera.
Yeah.
You're making me,
Oh, Belmont Park. My mother-in-law works there during the season, so she's always getting us Belmont Park
So do I.
making me
cups
homesick.
and stuff. Which this was very good. I actually like
Got
it.
really out of